What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Nexus podcast. Today we are doing a special player profile of Alex. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hi Josh, good to be here.
Yeah, so Alex is a fantastic player and has had some huge results in the early stages of this game. So we thought we'd get him on. I recently read his blogs that he put out on, was it just on Facebook or did you put him out in other places?
I put him on Facebook and Discord, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so it's just basically written reports of his experiences at Twickenham, which is, I think, still the biggest event that's fired off so far in the world, and more recently Gencon. And they were really great reads, so I thought, may as well get him on and, have a chat about it. So yeah, so we'll get straight into it pretty much. So before we get into your Star Wars career, we'll do the standard things we do here. And so how did you get into TCGs initially? What was your pathway in?
I started at a very early age. My first TCG was Yu-Gi-Oh, which I learnt about when I was like 6 years old by happening to just change the channel one day, and a Yu-Gi-Oh episode popped up. And I kind of just kept watching it. I was fascinated by it, and eventually convinced my dad to buy me some booster packs down on the local game stores, and kind of never looked back. And I've dabbled in quite a few throughout the years. Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, Pokemon for quite a while. More recently, I've seen a good amount of success in the Final Fantasy trading card game, which is one of the sort of lesser known, more niche ones. And I've tried a bit of sort of all the ones that have come out over the past few years, as there's been a big kind of surge in TCGs before and during and after the COVID pandemic. And Star Wars has been the one that's kind of stuck the most out of the ones I've dabbled in.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an insane amount of card games coming out over the last few years. And like you say, I guess a lot of them aren't sticking. Star Wars doesn't seem to have this problem right now. It seems to be going from strength to strength. And yeah, that's why we're here, really, to talk about that game. So what attracted you to Star Wars initially, as a player and in general?
I mean, so the main two things I kind of look for now with card games, as my sort of time becomes more precious as I get older, is that I want to do ones that I enjoy for both a sort of gameplay, mechanically kind of perspective, and because I like the IP. And Star Wars, as many people are, I'm a huge fan. And I think I don't think the Star Wars Unlimited is perfect in terms of representing what I like most about the IP, but it does a pretty good job. You can't beat having Darth Vader on a card and having it being sort of very impactful in your deck.
100%, yeah.
And same with Luke. I haven't ever played a deck with Luke Skywalker in it, but those kind of things, and the little things like Vader and Luke, when they sort of clash, they leave each other. They can't kill each other by themselves. It's just these little things.
The thematic parts of it.
Yeah. I like that. I like that thing about card games. And I never played a card game. Not that there have been very many, but where one person takes an action, then another, instead of it just being purely turn-based, people take their turn one at a time.
Yeah.
So that level of interaction leaves a lot to be explored, and is one of the big reasons why Star Wars is so good, because games can be decided literally within an action. It's not even within a turn.
That happens more often than not as well. I find at a higher level, it's very, very often it will just be one action away from the kill. Makes for an exciting sort of scenario, and I like the turn-based system because you can't really slow play in this game, and you're not sitting there watching your opponent doing stuff. And I think that's, for me, that is a strong reason why I got into the game in the first place. 100%.
The pacing is great as well. That is a big thing. You never kind of get bored. Never.
Yeah, you have to stay on your toes. Yeah. You have to, otherwise, your opponent's going to be like tapping the table, like, what are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so great. Glad that you got into this game. Let's have a little talk about your history as well. So you mentioned Final Fantasy. I've read somewhere that you've done quite well at Worlds at Final Fantasy. Could you fill us in there? Give us an idea of your sort of level of skill.
I mean, I'm not the kind of person that loves talking about it, but since you brought it up, I guess I have to now. So Final Fantasy's been around for about seven odd years now, since 2017. In that time, there's been 4 World Championship tournaments, mainly because COVID kind of knocked 3 years out of it.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I've won 2 of them, so
wow,
I have a pretty good track record in the game. It's been very good to me. It's helped me a lot on just many levels of my life. When I first started playing, I was a lot more of a, I guess, typical kind of quite shy card gamer, and a big part of doing well in Final Fantasy has kind of forced me to be more, I guess, more talkative and more social, and be a good ambassador for the game, and especially for my store, things like that. So it's just done a lot for me in general.
Yeah, and it's fantastic.
It's just been a lot of fun to play. It's obviously this is a Star Wars podcast, but
no, I mean we're a card-based channel. We're not just strictly Star Wars, so we like to talk about every card game, really.
But Final Fantasy is where I felt the most comfortable in any card game. It's made by Japanese developers who majority of them are ex or still Magic the Gathering professional players, so they've got a lot of good history there. It's just a sort of well-rounded game that it doesn't have a massive community, but the community does have is very solid, and that's another thing I look for in card games now, is that what the kind of people playing them, what's the sort of local scene like, what do the players want out of the game. And a lot of people are just kind of playing for the joy of playing card games and social interaction and hanging out, having a good time.
Which is what it's all about, really. I mean, obviously we all like to win. We all like to win and win prizes, but if the vibes are good, it makes it much more of you feel much more encouraged to play. Sure. So let's get into the deck and have a little chat about your Star Wars competitive play now. So we're just going to switch screens here. Alrighty, so Boba Fett, Mr. Boba Fett. What's your reason for playing this? I know it's obvious that it's like one of the best decks in the format, and that goes without saying that it's a very, very strong deck to play. But yeah, what attracted you to this initially? Because you obviously played at the pre-release event in Twickenham, which we'll talk about first.
Yeah, so for that, I had been somewhat reliant on friends, especially in America that I speak to, where Star Wars was very hyped, to kind of give me the lowdown on what was looking strong out of the gate. And everyone was saying, Boba Fett's going to be the best leader and blah, blah, blah. And I take these things with a pinch of salt. And I was like, I'll give a couple of things a go. And when I just looked at Boba and looked at the way the deck was kind of crafted in set 1, how nice the kind of all the units lined up on the curve, the strength with green of the events like Resupply and Overwhelming Barrage, just really like cards that you see them in any other card game that's similar to this, are always like notoriously strong, like AoE effects, like Overwhelming Barrage, always really good.
Yeah, I mean,
any kind of ramp,
Overwhelming Barrage for me is one of the. I mean, I play mainly Rebels, and Overwhelming Barrage is the worst card for me. I have to play around that so often. But no, I mean, it's yeah. I can see why that attracts you to it. So Twickenham, that was the first like premier event there was, really, or at least in the UK, and it was a massive event. It was announced fairly late. I think there was a huge demand for something, so Asmodee and Fantasy Flight jumped into gear and got it going, and you actually went 8-0, which is incredible, really. I mean, So were you expecting to do so well, or I mean, obviously everyone hopes to, but did you feel comfortable with the deck enough? Had you had a good amount of practice?
I wouldn't say I had. I mean, obviously I had enough practice because it ended up getting the result, but I definitely didn't go into it thinking, yeah, I've got this on lock kind of thing. I'd only played a sort of few weeks of locals. A lot of my sort of testing had been, I guess you could say, in my head, making sure everything kind of made sense. That's a big thing for me in cards, to make sure everything makes sense on paper. And the deck had been doing like fine at locals, but hadn't been. I've been one of my other buddies from Final Fantasy who's done very well. He was on Boba Yellow, and it was a very sort of back and forth matchup where if we just kind of played a normal game, he would generally do better because Bodhi, Cantina Bouncer, these double yellow cards just kind of beat you normally, and then some games I would just get the resupply or the super laser tech on 3, and then I'd be able to ramp out a Darth Vader quickly, these kind of things.
The ECL would always come into play for sure.
Yeah, the ECL was huge. Yeah, with the Steadfast Battalion at the time. These kind of things.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was but it didn't feel like I had a clear advantage or he had a clear advantage. So I'm like, if the same sort of thing goes at Twickenham, it just could be anyone's game, and you just got to play to the best of your ability. And I just kind of I mostly did that. I made a few kind of errors on that day, but I think everyone else wasn't as super practiced. Not everyone else kind of knew.
I mean, it was very, very early, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't worried on that perspective. Like, there could have been some people that maybe had practiced the whole like 3 weeks before the during release to the event.
Yeah.
And they might have smoked it if they had.
Yeah.
But I guess that wasn't the case, or it didn't work out for those people if they did. And I just kind of got fortunate in that regard, and yeah, it was just very, very solid performance for the deck at the time. Maybe very pleased.
It's not so relevant now, but what was your MVP card of the day? Was it the fire spray, or was it the Vader?
It's tough. Like every card, like because of the way the game works, that you just kind of locked into playing a certain power level of card each turn. That some games you just never need Darth Vader. Some games it kind of you play the fire spray down and that's kind of it. So I would say overall fire spray was the most impactful card. But I remember thinking before the event, like especially playing against the Boba Yellow, is that do you need Vader? Some games you actually don't like get the 7 too comfortably, and he's not going to save you when you do. But then when I played a mirror match on the day in the first round, and we both have Vader in our deck, of course, I'm like, yeah, if I didn't have Vader here and he has 3 Vaders, it's like...
Yeah, it's whoever gets there first. It's a race.
Yeah, exactly. So if I had no Vader, I would also have no chance. So yeah, probably those 2 top-end cards were a big deal. Steadfast Battalion was great at the time as well, because people just weren't... playing it was quite common knowledge, but they weren't playing around it that much.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So an amazing result, 8-0. I'm assuming you were pretty happy about that. And since then, you, as far as I read on your blog, you haven't really practiced too much before going into Gencon. Like, you haven't really had as much time as you'd like to have played in other competitive tournaments. Is that right?
Yeah. It's like with Final Fantasy, I have a group that I would sort of play with every week. With Star Wars, I just have the local events I run at the store. I don't sort of travel around too much. It also happens that a lot of the events are on like Wednesday in London, so it's hard to travel around anyway. And yeah, our group is quite small, so it's kind of hard to get a big variation in testing. A lot of our players have been playing the same thing all throughout set 1. Some of them are still playing in set 2, which is great. It's good to be practiced on one thing, but I was only getting testing against maybe like 3 or 4 different leaders, and even as set 2 came around, a couple of people trying out Han and Kira, but very little else. So when I went to Gen Con and played against like Bosk for the first time, it was like this is completely new. I'm figuring it out as I go, which is fun. But it's definitely it is
not ideal.
The nerve-wracking part. The thing you don't want to be is underprepared, and I knew that fully going in. I was just once again kind of relying on the generic strength of Boba as a leader to just help me give me a little bit of help figuring it out as I
get
was
over
going.
the line. Yeah, allow you an odd mistake here and there, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, no, that makes sense. So Gencon, you played 2 of the events, right?
Yes, yeah, I got tickets for the Friday and Saturday event, and there were 3 in total, 1 on Thursday as well.
Okay, and so you played the same deck on both days, I assume. The deck on our screen right now.
Yeah, so this is Saturday's version. I made a few adjustments from Friday.
Okay, that's interesting.
I just
Well,
posted the deck I was happy with.
So this is Saturday's version on the screen. We'll
Yeah.
start with Friday. So Friday, how was your result? And what was the difference between what we've got on the screen now?
So Friday was 5-2, and I squeaked in at 16th because one of my losses was to the Exo Kira player Wu.
Ooh, very nice.
And that was that was my second round. It was on stream, and again I'd sort of just come into this. That was
no, not the stream curse.
Yeah, it was just kind of like it was all a rough in general. I felt super underprepared, and also the guy casting it, he's asking us to sort of introduce ourselves a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, you're Wu," and I'm like, "Oh, damn, this guy's hot stuff."
Yeah.
And it just kind of got. It didn't like put me on tilt exactly, but it definitely kind of got in my head that it's like you're on stream, you're playing against this good player. You kind of gotta show you. Keep your wits about you, and I just kept kind of fluffing about and playing into things a bit silly.
Kira is a quite punishing deck as well if you make mistakes against it.
Yeah.
It's tough. I think it's one of the toughest new decks in the format, to be honest.
Yeah, we discussed the matchup after, and he was always kind of favoured. But I had taken a couple of games off it back home, so I was like, maybe an 0-2 showing on stream is not the best way to motivate you for the rest of the tournament. And then my other loss was pretty unfortunate because I had misunderstood when the lunch break would end, and I was out at the food trucks, which are quite a distance from the event hall. When I looked at my phone and saw the round timer going for round 4, and I was like, oh, damn. And I didn't know how long the cutoff was for like a game loss or a match loss in Star Wars, but I think it's like 15 minutes for the match and 5 minutes for the game, something like that. So I decided, look, if I walk back, I'll miss the entire round. I might as well give myself a chance. So I kind of sprinted back, got to the table. The guy was very chill. But Judge said, you've got a game 1 loss. I'm like, okay, get to side deck at least. So I got to side in my heals for his Sabine matchup. And I took game 2. It was a close one. And then game 3, it just came down to the wire, and he found the extra damage that time. And that was like the moment where I was like, damn, I just, that's the first time I've ever gotten a game loss for tardiness. Like,
yeah.
I was like, well, maybe this just isn't, I came in underprepared. Everyone else is, a lot more experienced than I am at this point. Am I wasting my time being here? But I stuck it out, played pretty well the rest of the event, and like I say, squeaked in on the 16th and secured the finalizer mat, which I was very pleased about. And I was like, okay, I've got the mat. I could say, I topped the Gencon event. I'm not the worst in the world,
Yeah.
But I was like,
you got the Medal of Honor.
Yeah, but I've got this Saturday ticket. I might as well give it a fair shot. And
so what changes did you make from Friday to Saturday then? Anything crazy, or just a few little?
One of the big thing was I had 3 copies of Dr. Evazan in the main on Friday, and although my experience with the card is the bounty effect on it isn't too risky, it's mainly because you just kind of resource it in the times where you draw it and it would be risky, whereas even something like a Crafty Smuggler, which is kind of what ended up replacing it, at least you can just kind of play that to the board without worry, and it can block an Avenger a little bit better, something like that.
Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, Evazan basically, when it dies, the bounty allows 12 resources to be restood. So it's kind of like you allow your opponent to have another turn if they've got the cards to play. So it's a high risk, high reward kind of deal.
Yeah, and I had a weird interaction actually in round 3 with Evazan, where I was playing against the Sabine, and he he ECO'd in Fighters for Freedom, which says Saboteur, and he just kind of, it didn't get to restand too many resources, but he, as a bean deck, obviously doesn't care, it just wants to put out damage quickly as possible.
Yeah,
I still ended up winning that game, and I was kind of glad because he'd used the ECL on that instead of like Wrecker or Poe. But it was situations like that, I'm like, that's not going to happen every single time, and maybe I'm just supposed to remove the risk entirely and stick with my 2/2. So
yeah, I mean, against blue, it's just like a non-starter. You can't, you just instantly charge it, don't you? So it's difficult card.
But yeah, the only other sort of big changes in the main, I had 3 reinforcement walkers in the side. I put 1 in the main because I just wanted that little bit extra top end, and I wanted the extra heal because even against Sabine, sometimes you get to 8 resources, but normally if you do and you're not healing like on that turn, you will die. But I did have a game where it's Sabine where I did have it on 8, and it did win the game. Otherwise, there wasn't that much that changed. It was mainly the sideboard, actually. I had 2 confiscates in because I wanted more outs to Darksaber and opposing Boba Fett's armor. I didn't. I only played like against Sabine. It's weird because they only have 3 Darksabers or upgrades, so you might have the confiscate and they never have the Darksaber in some cases. And then against Boba, I just didn't play that many Bobas on day 1. There weren't that many, it felt like, in the room. So I was like, I'll side a bit more for control because I lost Akira on Friday. And that was good because I ended up playing a Palpatine where it came in useful on Saturday, the Devastator in the side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, awesome. You did much better on your second attempt. It was 7-1, right? If I'm not mistaken.
6-1, yeah. So 7-round events both days, so 6-1. Yeah, I lost this time. Lost in round 4, so lost halfway through the day to a cunning hand, which also was a 2-0 win that just kind of just outpaced me, and the guy just played very solid, and I kept kind of trying to claw it back both games, but my healing wasn't as efficient as the damage he was able to put out.
Yeah, sometimes Cunning Han can just have all the answers. It's weird, isn't it? It's just like
I think game 1 he saw all 3 copies of Cunning as well. And
I mean that's all she wrote in that case. That's a hell of a curve play to just keep dropping that. Very frustrating for the opponent as well. So so 6-1. You ended up in 3rd place, was it, or 4th place?
Yeah, third
place. So you must have been very pleased with improving on your 16th from the first day.
Yeah, like it was nice to get the extra kind of match win because it felt like I'd improved the deck and it had shown it, and it was also a case of I'd lost that game to tardiness, and that could have also been a 6-1 day yesterday. So I was just a bit more on the ball on Saturday, making sure I didn't make any kind of mistakes like that as well. And I think that overall made me a bit more focused on the games I was playing as well. So with all that kind of extra, all those extra kind of focus points, I just felt a lot better about the deck. And also just felt like I drew better. I had like the games felt closer a lot of the times, but I drew the resupplies when I needed them more often. I drew a Vader or a Maul on like turn on resource 7 or resource 8 when I kind of needed it to close out a game. So it's sometimes it's that weird superstition where you make positive changes to a deck and then the deck kind of like rewards you by you just drawing better and feeling better about
the heart of the cards becomes a bit more relevant.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. So just a quick question about ramping. How ramping on curve on turn 2, how much do you think the importance of it in winning the game? Does it like improve your chances a lot? Because obviously you go straight into your deploy turn next turn. Do you think it's a big difference in whether the deck's successful?
Yeah, it's like a lot of cases it is. There's rarely ever cases where it's not. There's a lot of green decks that are also playing ramp, and generally if you're playing, Boba Green has aggressive lines, but it is mainly a mid-range deck. So if you let a control deck ramp and then you don't ramp, it will just, you won't sort of kill it in time before it starts dropping all its bombs. So it's useful there to keep up or to get a bit more ahead early. And even against aggro, it's very good because, as you say, you get to flip the leader straight away next turn. So one of the most common plays from set 1 and still in set 2 is that you're play a unit on the first turn just to kind of absorb some damage. You'll resupply on 2, and then you'll flip Boba on 3 and overwhelming barrage their boards. Swing in with Boba for a nice buttload of damage. He'll also untap 2 resources. Maybe you can play another unit down, or you can put his armor on him. Nowadays,
when you start reeling off this as the turn 4 play, and then you compare it to some other decks in the format where it's exactly. Play 1 unit. It's it's kind of wild, you can see why it's sort of known as the strongest deck. But yeah, so would you say like it's the be all end all to ramp, or would you say you can make do without it if you do miss it?
Like there's definitely been games I can do that. Actually, that was one of the other changes. I had Forlom in the deck on Friday's event, and I just cut him completely. Didn't really even replace him. I went from 54 cars down to 52 because I wanted to at first hedge on not having ramp. So I'm like, well, if I don't have my 3 into 5, I kind of need a 4 as a make do in the meanwhile. And Forlom just isn't very good. 4 drops in general in this deck just aren't very good. So it was like, I'm just gonna either see ramp, or I'm just gonna probably just be happy playing like a 3 drop on that turn. Like a lot of the time, just playing 3 drop Boba Fett on your 4 resource turn is also passable. There are things you can do to sort of manipulate the mana, like maybe you'll use the Hotshot Blaster on your 2 drop. That will cost you like 3 of your 4. You use that to trade into something, and Boba will untap and let you play another 2 drop. So there is quite easy ways to also manipulate your mana around early when you don't see ramp. So it's not the be all end all, but yeah, it certainly makes things just a lot more straightforward.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so one huge thing, and I'd say this is the most controversial part of your list: no ECL. What is your reason for that?
Well, simply is that you look at this list, and even Friday's list, there was nothing particularly valuable to ECL in. Steadfast Battalion is just it went from hero to 0 quite quickly, just because your leader is a bit more vulnerable in set 2, even Boba with his 7 HP. But it just felt too risky, in that card as well. If you draw it too late, or you sort of draw it at the wrong time, it can be a bit awkward, and it is just kind of sitting there as a weak minion. So then what have you got? You got Fett's Fire Spray and Rook in this deck. A Rook's a great ECL target, but there's just one copy that's just kind of in there to fill out the curve. And then Fire Spray is only good to, they have to have a space unit. A lot of the times, a lot of Star Wars right now is played on the ground, so there's just not a comfortable target for it. They even nerfed Boba Fett 3 drop, because it doesn't kill leaders on the turn they come out now with ECL. So it just kind of felt like most of the time I wouldn't be getting the 5 HP back, the 5 HP difference between ECL's 25 and the generic Green's 30. And a lot of my situations, especially against Sabine, that was correct. And, I would maybe save 3 damage by ECLing an early 3 drop to kill their 3 drop. But then those Sabine games would come down to like 1 or 2 HP. I'm like, if I had been on ECL, I would have died here.
Yeah. So you definitely paid dividends then.
A lot of the Sabine players also said, they also acknowledged like 30 is actually quite a difficult number to reach. They're kind of hoping to prey on other ECL players that are playing less aggressive decks.
Yeah, because they can get there. They can get there very quickly, right?
But yeah, 30 HP base with 3 copies of Crom. That one heal doesn't seem like much, but when these Sabine decks are geared to be dealing 25 damage, or maybe 30 by sort of 6-7 resources, and then you've just got a couple more points of HP in there, it makes the world of difference in Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. So, got a quick few more questions before we go. What would you say the main weakness is for Boba Green?
I think it is hard control in general. Normally something blue, something vigilance. You like the Kira. The main reason that matchup was so difficult is because the guy knew what to do. He had power of the dark side early in our first game, made sure to trade off all my small minions on the board, and either my leader was going to die to power of the dark side, or he's just going to trade with his leader, which he's fine with because his leader is less valuable than mine. And then you've got things like maybe Palpatine blue, which there were a couple of, but I thankfully didn't run into them. And that deck has access to ramp as well, and it also just has Avengers, Devastators, just things like that, where you don't have as easy a time closing out the game quickly as double yellow Boba does, double cunning. So they have just a bit more time to hit their sort of 8-9 curve and eventually just sort of run you out of things to do.
Yeah, basically, extort you. All right, so awesome. So any changes moving forward? I mean, obviously you've done quite well, but is there anything that stands out from your list on the screen that you might alter for your next appearance?
I mean, Reinforcement Walker at 1 was such an overperformer, and I had it at 2, like most of last set. I think I would just put it back to 2 because I think just Boba is successful because he has early game, mid game, and late game, and having that extra bit of late game versus just a lot of matchups. That 3 healing every turn on that 9 body is just huge.
6-9 is a huge body. Let's be honest, it's a pain to deal with for most players.
I was a bit nervous about it because blue got more tools like Fell the Dragon and just Rivals Fall in general, so it's never going to really do much there. But at the same time, like, they're still using that removal anyway on all your other threats, on your Vaders and your Mauls, so just having more things they have to sync.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of top end. I mean, like 10 cards that would be considered boss monsters, but I guess that also paid dividends, just being able to curve into your power cards when possible.
Yeah. But there's nothing I kind of going into an event blind as you do with most of them. There's nothing I'm looking at and I'm thinking, yeah, that's got to go or that's got to go in.
Yeah.
Every card in this particular build just did work. I mean, so the jetpack is like the one card I barely used the entire couple of days.
That actually seems to be underperforming in a lot of players' lists that I've spoken to from Gencon. Like, a lot of players have just said they probably just wouldn't put it in. They put something else in.
I'm not allowed to play 4 copies of Hotshot Blaster, so Jetpack seems like the kind of best alternative. And the card has its uses. It's just literally I very rarely saw it anyway because it is 1 copy.
Yeah.
So I wanted more smuggle. I think that's like maybe I just need to look at if there's some other smuggle options.
Well, talking of smuggle, Bazine, how did she perform for you? Because I've played a bit of Boba since the new set dropped, and she has been incredible.
She is the reason I was comfortable still taking the deck into set 2. I don't know. I think I honestly might have tried to pivot to something else last minute if Bazine didn't exist, because again, that is a huge help versus the tough vigilance matchups, because you can. Her smuggle is just so great because you're either playing a turn 1 against a lot of matchups, especially if you get the initiative first and you take away their turn 1 play most of the time. Or you're playing against control and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to use this too early because I don't care about their early cards. I care about their late game. I'll just put her on the resources, and then when I just don't feel like committing much to the board for a turn, flip her over, take away your vigilance, your Avenger, your
cunning.
Yeah, cunning. All these kind of cards. I did take quite a few cunnings.
Yeah, cunning is what I always take when I see it with her. It's so satisfying.
Every matchup has bombs. Sabine. I would always flip it on. I would deliberately kind of resource it and be like, yep, when they're going into that 6 mana turn for their ECL Wrecker, I'm gonna flip Sabine over and take it away.
Take that Wrecker.
Happened twice, and it was fantastic. It was great, and I can't speak highly enough of the card. It's fantastic, and it's also like a pseudo replacement for Bodhi Rook in this deck, which obviously you don't have access to, which Yellow Boba does. So it gives you a bit more of a parallel there.
Perfect. All right, so we're pretty much there. I'm going to do one more question, which is a big debate out there at the moment. I don't think it's that much of a debate, but who's better, Darth Maul or Vader? You have 3 of each. Who performed better at Gen Con?
It's honestly still got to go to Vader.
Yeah.
The makeup of this deck really suits Vader. I mean, suits Maul as well. They both go so well hand in hand in Boba Fett in particular. But the times where I would Vader and I would reveal Sabine and Salacious Crumb, it was like those games were just always like kind of over then. You get the consistent healing from Crumb every turn when they're trying to just finish you off, and the Bazine takes the best card out of their hand, and that's just it's a big thing. And we were talking about a lot of modern card games are like this as well, where they don't really like letting you search your deck very often. And look at top 10 is about the closest you get in Star Wars without wasting resources on search your feelings or whatever that one blue card is from set 1. So being able to just see cards you wouldn't have seen for like another 4 turns, or probably not the entire game, is a big deal. But Maul was still great. I mean, if I had to cut, like I might cut a Maul for a reinforcement walker, but Maul still does a lot of work. And because like these Bazines and these Crumbs just kind of sit there, they don't want to attack them because they want to attack your base most of the time. They just soak up all the damage from Maul as well. So they're both fantastic. But Vader definitely deserves the legend tag if the two are to compete.
Nice. All right, so one quick one as well. Sorry, I keep coming back. Bosk has been up in the air at the moment because a lot of cards are now free costs have 5 defense. How did it perform for you? Does it still have a place?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely times like there'll be annoying turns where Sabine would smuggle in their Cassian, which has that nice 3/5 body, and it hits you straight away. It's annoying, but there's not really anything better than Bosk. But also, like, he's still, sometimes you just are happy to just kind of play him as a 4/5, because although you're not maybe killing their unit, they're not killing your Bosk. So as long as your Bosk just sticks for the next rotation, you play Barrage on Bosk, it's better than playing it on Boba because you can get extra 2 ping. Your McClunky does an extra 2 damage kind of thing. Your Waylay gets to bounce a threat and then ping something else off. That 2 ping does a lot of work. So I wouldn't leave home without Bosk right now. And also I don't know what you replace it. I mean, I don't think he's gonna, if Boba continues to perform in coming sets, I don't necessarily think Bosk is gonna stay around at 3 copies. But yeah, right now it's like, what unit are you putting? More copies of Rook? Nah, Bosk is better than Rook overall, I think.
All right, makes sense. So thank you for all the great insight, Alex. It has been a really a great chat. And congratulations again on your great performance. Flying out to America to play card tournaments. I've done it. Did it a few times last year. It can be quite taxing, to be honest. It's quite a hard thing to do, and to get great results like that, it's great. You were the only Brit over there as well playing Star Wars, right? I had a few friends playing Battle Spirits for sure, but
I'm not. I think I looked over just out of curiosity over the standings or whatever. There was one person with a British flag who went 0-1 drop in one of the days. So I don't actually know if they actually really played or maybe just. But yeah, I think the only Brit that kind of played the events.
Well, it's great. It's great to get some representation over there, especially up at the top of the ladder. So so thanks again, Alex. And I mean, we hope to see you at more tournaments coming up in the UK and beyond. And maybe we'll get you back on the channel if you do well at another tournament in the future.
Absolutely, something for me to look forward to.
100%. So thank you very much. And any final shout outs before we go?
No, not really. Just if you're in or around London and you fancy playing Star Wars, we play currently at the Brotherhood on Wednesdays, and we've usually got something on most weekends. Do come check us out. It's a good bunch of guys we've got playing at the moment, and really looking to grow that scene and keep this game going strong.
Yeah, thank you. And so we'll see you all next time, guys. Thank you for checking out the video, and if you've got any comments about Alex's build in general, please put them down below. But we'll see you all next time. Thanks again, Alex.
Take care, guys. Thanks so much.